So, good morning, everyone. Today, I'm Zoha, and this is Zoha Means Light. It's my channel. I am a 200-hour certified yoga teacher. I always say yoga teacher. I don't know where that came from. I don't know where that I got that from, but yoga teacher and a certified Reiki practitioner. Reiki is a form of healing that you use your hands to do. I am a jewelry designer, an artist of various mediums, and I do a lot of healing work, and I like to share my healing work with you all. As you know, I love this. I just been experimenting with copper lately and figuring out some new stuff. But today I wanted to come talk to you guys. I hope you're having a good day, and if you're seeing this, I hope this edifies your soul and your spirit. Today I wanted to come talk to you guys about shadow work. I got on my IG live yesterday and I talked about it. And I was going to just transfer that over here, but then I was like, how, I could do it again. And something different might come up, right? So let's delve into it. I get this question a lot. What is shadow work? What is the shadow self? Peace, Bonafide. How are you? Good morning, or grand rising, or happy day. So yeah, I get that question a lot. Like, what is shadow work? And it's simply what it says. It's engaging your shadow self. And the shadow is the parts of yourself that you don't readily show to other people, that you don't usually share with other people because you may have some shame or guilt attached to those parts of your beingness. And you might have difficulty sharing all those aspects of yourself. And sometimes, as a Black person growing up in America, good morning, Damon. Thank you. I hope you get your hat today too. Sometimes as a Black person, we're actually taught to live in our shadow, because of a part of a communal way of living. One shadow aspect of being Black I can think of is code switching. And if you're Black in America, I don't know about everywhere else, but it might apply to everywhere else. But we are taught to show up a certain kind of way in public that we don't show up in private. There's like, you code switch, you put on your white voice, you put on your professional way of being. You're not relaxed, you're not yourself, your hair is like, not like I am right now. Your hair is tight and you're pulled back and you're reserved, because it's taught to you very masculine. Yes, it's taught to you very early on that who you are is not acceptable in public. And it's constantly taught to you. Hold on for a sec, I want to turn on this light. That we don't show our ass in public. We don't talk about this in public. Or another common thing that I heard when I was little: what happens in this house stays in this house. And that's a form of shadow work. That's how we develop our of the shadow self. I mean, that's a form of the shadow self, and that's how we develop our shadow selves. That's a part of how we develop our shadow selves, by masking and covering who we are, hiding parts of our identity in order to get along in mainstream society, or even in pseudo society. Like sometimes in Black society, there are some things that are unacceptable. Even as a Black person, there are ways of being that other Black people do not think is appropriate for you to be outside your home. And different classes of Black people act different ways. And so the shadow is very interesting to me, because in that layer, there's the you that you show to the world. There's the you that you show to people who you love and feel semi-comfortable with. And then there's the you that very rarely anyone sees. Even you rarely see that person. Even when you see that part of you, you like, why did I do that? What's going on with me? You even question because there's some shame and some guilt attached to those ways of being. So I think that a lot of times we start to stuff those things down and think that the more appropriate parts of ourselves, or the parts of ourselves that are deemed more appropriate by society, are our real self, are our actual, you know, that's who we are. And then the other parts of ourselves that are not deemed appropriate by society, we tend to disconnect from those parts of ourselves. And that's how those parts of ourselves get relegated to the shadow, to behind you, right? So then when you get into relationships, because this is where the shadow self shows up full frontal. It's like running amok in relationships, because the person that you're engaged with, they got in a relationship with your representative, right? And then your full person, your person who comes with everything together, and they're in their three-piece suit, and they know how to say all the right words. They can articulate their thoughts and needs and feelings and everything off the top, and da. And then when you get in the house with that person, you realize that there are certain traumas, there are certain experiences that this person has had that you did not get to know about this person when they were presenting their public self. Now we're digging deeper into the shadow. Now, the shadow doesn't always have to be bad, but I think that we tend to think that shadows are bad because we don't feel comfortable presenting them to the world at large. Would you say Bonafide? A while ago, I remember so much fuss being made about sisters wearing bonnets in public, and that's one example I could think of. That argument was amongst us, nobody else, just us going back and forth. You're correct, right? So that's an aspect of, right, how we feel like there are certain things that just should not be done in public. Like, okay, a part of my shadow self is very let me explain this. A part of my representative self is very well put together. It's never on the internet without her hair coiffed properly and presented with her jewelry on and looking nice and face done up. That's a part of my representative self. But that's not actual reality. That is a forced reality that I had forced myself to live in, because those are the rules of society, and those are specifically the rules of Black society. Specifically. And so when you see me come on here, and the first thing in the morning after I just brush my teeth and wash my face, and I haven't really done anything other than that to myself, this is me not entertaining that representative. This is me being okay with my shadow self, or what other people would perceive as something that they don't agree with or like or aren't interested in, allowing it to show up to the forefront, because this is a reality for me. This is how I look when I wake up. I don't wake up with makeup on. I don't wake up with my eyebrows done. I don't wake up with earrings on. It's a false reality. And the fact that, we are forced to engage in that constantly keeps building the shadow self. It builds that aspect of ourselves. And that aspect of ourselves can be dangerous, because once you start being committed to living in this fantasy, then the real you, the parts of you that don't get to experience life, get pushed to the back, and they show up in the most interesting ways and harmful ways to yourself and others. Now, certain aspects of the shadow can be dangerous, or I won't say dangerous, but harmful, like, lying, cheating, being abusive and manipulative. Those are all shadow aspects that are can have negative effects on your life, and lots of people don't like to admit that they have been liars or cheaters, or currently are liars and cheaters and thieves and all of those types of things. But that's an aspect of your behavior. That's an aspect of your shadow self. You get to own it. You get to own it, because the only way that behavior is going to the only way you're going to be able to make a healthy change in that behavior is identifying that it exists. Sometimes our shadow selves can be more positive and beautiful than our masks. I agree. And that is, really, somebody else said something. And don't forget passive aggressive behavior as well. Yes, passive aggressive behavior is a part of the shadow self. And but there's also aspects of the shadow self that we don't allow, like sensuality. This is why you see me face forward with my sensuality on my page a lot. And I don't wrap it up. I don't make it pretty all the time. I don't make it, completely seductive, because being feminine and being a woman is not always about having the perfect lingerie, your hair being done all the time perfect. You're always being manicured in your speaking and soft and gentile. Sensuality can be robust in a woman. Sensuality can be very in your face. And I think that, we teach women to be demure in their sensuality, and then they don't get to explore it, and then parts of their sensuality gets pushed back to the shadow, gets relegated to the shadow. I'm sorry, I have so many plants. These plant bugs are trying to take over my life. Gets relegated to the shadow, and a lot of people, women and men, have shame about the sexual thoughts that they have, about the sensual thoughts that they have, about the thoughts that they imagine. And that's why the porn industry is so big. Pornography makes so much money off of people because they're afraid to admit that they have these aspects of themselves. They have to go somewhere and hide and pay for something instead of bringing it to the forefront in their partnership or even with themselves. And all of these things create all types of issues in community. It creates rapists. It creates, that's what creates rapists and sexual assault and abusers in homes. Not being able to say, I have these things that I think about, or I have these desires, or I feel this way about that. I'm not saying that what you're saying is going to be acceptable to everyone that you meet. It should be acceptable to you, though. And we have so much shadow behavior in the Black community, and that's why we all have one. I had one, that uncle that nobody would let any of the kids be around by himself because he had done something, inappropriate to someone's child or to one of his siblings when he was younger. And now everyone just watches him like a hawk instead of saying, my guy, you need to go get some support and some help. We can't let you be around our children. And this is what creates generational issues. Acting like we don't have this stuff going on. I'm going to see what y'all said. With the transparency comes truth, and truth comes healing and accountability. Oh, accountability. Martisha, you speaking my love language, sis. You ain't lying. Since the beginning of time, deviant behavior is crazy. Yeah, and some of it don't have to become deviant. I think that the more a person feels alone and unheard, that deviant energy becomes more attractive. Like, the more outcast you feel, the more outlier you feel. And we are very good at making people feel like they're not a part of the community. We're very good at shunning people. We're very good at getting rid of people from the community, or making people feel ostracized within the community. A functional cinematic example is the movie Twilight. Edward showed Bella how he looked in the sun, his skin glowed and sparkled like diamonds. He hid it to keep people from seeing he was different. Yes. I haven't seen that movie in ages. Yes. And if you don't fit the mainstream of your community, you're going to be an outlier. Now, outliers can look very different ways. I was an outlier. I've always been an outlier since I was born. My mother was an outlier. Her mother was an outlier. When you don't fit the parameters of the community and what they think is good and well, you tend to fall on the outside of that community. Now, what do we do with those peoples? Peace, carbonated queen. What do we do with those people? Do we act like they don't exist? Do we help them, support them in the ways that we know how? Do we learn to expand our consciousness to include such people? So far, from what I've seen, most people who don't feel a part of the community build their own communities. And you're right, we love them more. You're right, we do love them more, Martisha. We do love them more. Outliers are not, wait, are we talking about outliers or outcasts? Outliers are not necessarily shunned, are they? Well, you can say both, right? Outcasts are definitely shunned. Outliers are the people who don't exactly fit into the parameters, and they're not always shunned all the time, but they can be diminished, treated differently, not given the same respect and love and attention that the people who fit in the community have given. And that's why they tend to create their own communities, like the LGBT, that always gets me. The LGBTQIA community creates its own community because they are an outlier, right? And they're not necessarily acceptable in certain parts of other communities. And right, yeah, and free spirits are definitely outliers. People who don't subscribe to religious doctrine are outliers. But when I say my mother was probably more of an outcast / outlier, because she lived the life of a woman who did whatever the hell she wanted, whenever she wanted. And so, I've tried to share my mother's story without sharing all her story, because it's her story to share, but it's also part of my story because I was a part, I'm a part of it. But I try to find a way to respectfully share my mother's story, even though I don't feel any shame about who she is and who she's been. I did feel immense shame when I was a child because of Christian indoctrination. I felt immense shame about my mom being who she was, and I used to judge her a lot, and I made our relationship very difficult as a kid because I was very indoctrinated into Christianity, and I wanted a Christian mom. I wanted a mom who went to church. I wanted a mom who was, looked the way these other black women did, looked proper, didn't, hang out in the streets at night, didn't have boyfriends that she fought with and did drugs with. I wanted a mom like that when I was a kid, because it seemed like those people had it together, were so normal, and could have done things differently as far as mothering was concerned. As I get older, I realized that my mother was definitely a rebel in all ways, and still is to some point, even though she tries to assimilate now in her later life, because that's what life does to you when you try to forge your own path and you don't get any success. You just give up eventually. So we are worlds inside of worlds. They was good at covering things up. Yes, they were good at covering things up. And that's what I learned when I ended up in foster care and I got those so-called Christian moms. They were just as abusive, just as neglectful, just as mean as my drug-addicted, sex-addicted mom. I love being an outlier. I wouldn't want to be normal. That would be like a spiritual drudgery. Yeah. Yes, just as broken. Yes, they were. And but I had to see that for myself. I had to be exposed to that. And it's really interesting how, you don't realize, how your words, I used to pray when I was little, oh my God, I want another mother. I didn't know that the circumstances that would lead to me getting other mothers was going to look the way they looked. It was very devastating. So, I really learned a lot from asking for things, right? Like, words matter. Words mean things. Things happen when you talk. Worlds shift. Things open up. So I wanted to say all that to say that, yeah, we get to invite, right? Pray. Yes. We get to invite those parts of ourselves that we're not so, connected to and proud of, and or that we don't understand, out to play. We get to allow those parts of ourselves to engage in the world at large. Because my mom was such a sex forward person when I was a kid, I was very ashamed of my body, very ashamed of sexuality, sensuality in any way when I was younger. Anything, and even sometimes now, like my friends will be like, girl, you'll be up on the internet dropping it, throwing it and everything, and then somebody says something about sex and you turn red, because it's my internal programming to be ashamed of sex, to be ashamed of the body. I'm not actually, but there's still parts of me that are connected to those ideals, and I have to work against them every day to be myself, to be my full self. Yes, words have power. We use our words to speak life in the darkness. We all have some darkness that needs healing. Yes. I ran away from my mother 13 times between the ages of 4 and 7 because I just knew her behavior was off. I wish that I could meet your mother. Firstly, I would thank her for bringing you to. Oh, thank you, man. I need to call her because, we have a much better relationship now that I am an adult with my own mind, and I can understand circumstances and ideals and everything better with the childhood mind and the childhood thought. I'm not saying it's not advanced. I think children are advanced in way more things than adults are, but I do think children are way more easy to influence than adults are. And I was definitely one of those kids that was easily influenced by some shiny shit, because I didn't have any shiny shit. We didn't have anything. We're very poor. And so if you show me something pretty, I was like, I want it. I want it. And as an adult who was able to get all the shiny shit, I always tell everyone that my shadow self, my representative created the perfect life. I had the house. We had 2 houses, in fact. Both had our own cars. We both had good jobs. We lived in a beautiful neighborhood, pristine, all middle-class black folks. And I could tell you right now, the neighbor on the left of me was beating his wife. The neighbor on the right of me was cheating on his wife. And then we were over here with our trauma, me and my ex-husband, trying not to kill each other. So there is no escape from who you actually are. You can dress it up. You can make it pretty. You can buy all the houses and cars. You can have all the, outside accoutrements. Those are, easy to get, easier to attain. Money is easy to attain, and things are easy to attain. But your soul, your spirit, who was I when I had all that shit? Got all that shit, looked across the room at the person I was married to, and wanted to do some real introspective work, and couldn't get it done with him. He was not interested in knowing me. He was not interested in loving me. He just wanted me to keep up the appearance. Been through so much, sisters, I can certainly understand why you would get triggered from certain conversations about sexuality. Thank you, my beautiful sister. I appreciate you for your vulnerability. Thank you, guys. And good morning, Eduardo. Yeah, I really, and I'm not saying we don't deserve luxury and beautiful things and everything. I just want us to be connected to those things when we get them, and not those things run our lives and be the source of our happiness. And a lot of times those things are the source of our happiness. I'm not going to sit here and say it don't feel good to be able to go and buy some shit just because I want it, or go somewhere just because I want to go on a trip or whatever. That's all valid. It's all, it's your birthright to have those types of luxurious experiences. And are they even luxuries? They're just a part of life. And I think that's the thing, right? When you put this tag on it, then it makes it so out of the norm and exotic, and it does this thing to your brain. So what it do? I ain't heard that in a minute. So, just working to maintain, your truth and your authenticity and who you are is the best way that I can say is that we do shadow work. Money is not everything. Money is something. Peace is... Sis, that about when I got divorced, I literally said, I turned to my friends. They said, are you sure you want to get divorced? I said, I cannot energetically afford this marriage. It's costing me my peace. I can't afford it. I could afford a lot of things in the physical world, but mentally and spiritually and emotionally, I could not afford the connection. Financial wealth has nothing at all to do with emotional health or spiritual health. In some cases, its form is just a deep conversation for the lack of the latter. You better tell it. We have to understand everything is within our souls, needs to be healed. Self-love, knowledge of self is key. Energy, people don't understand. Y'all is on it this morning. Yes. I love when I get on here and we have these types of... It re-energizes me, honestly. So thank you guys. Thank you so much. We just... And I get it, I think it's this ideal, and what I had to realize when I started doing my ancestry, I had to go down that hole because I wanted to do it for my mom, actually, because she don't know nothing about her family. Like, she grew up fatherless like me. We literally met her father at the same time. My grandfather came around when I was probably like 9, and like he was there for a whole year. It felt so beautiful for them to reconnect in that way. And she was a product of her father was married, and so he didn't leave his wife for my grandmother or his child, and he didn't take care of his child. Just did act like he didn't have a child. And when he got divorced, he came around years later. My mother's a grown woman at this point, and he came and he showed up, like the white knight, and he did that thing, and he was really good. And I remember looking at my grandfather and thinking, yo, there's a man in our life. There's a man around, right? And it felt so great. And I think he was there for maybe 1.5 years, 2 years. And he had a heart attack and died. And we were literally about to move, and our life circumstances were changing. And then he died. And guess what? His family, who he had divorced and left, the children came and took everything. And my mother didn't get nothing. And so none of our circumstances, all the things that he had promised her, all the shit just died with him. And I think that like solidified in my mom's head that nothing, this was going to be her life. And because she was always looking for someone to save her, and she passed that on to her children, and I had to literally dig myself out of that mindset, one step at a time. Like, no one is coming to save you. You have to save yourself. It's no one's job to do for you what you won't do for yourself. That is too much, almost, to ask of someone else. Now, when people see you investing in yourself in a certain type of way, will they invest in you? Of course they will. Especially if they love you and they care for you. but they don't have to. Yes, another piece of her died, and it did. And I that's when the abuse, like, went back up. Like, I could chart that, our childhood abuse, and how, like, that triggered her so bad. Like, she went from 0 to 1,000 with the beatings, with the mental abuse, with the emotional abuse. Like, went from getting beat with belts and extension cords to anything she could find in the home. Anything. It didn't matter if we were screaming, bleeding. Like, her anger was unmatched at that point. And it only took 3-4 years for us to end up getting removed from her home completely, because she just couldn't handle it. It was too much. And mentally, if she had been in a society where people cared about women, she would have had psychological help, access to mental help, because the church can't help everything, even though we like to think it can. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional thinking about that, but the church can't help everything, even though we like to think that it can. Can't take up all those slacks. You can't just pray everything away. Jesus ain't gonna heal everything. Sometimes you gotta go get some psychological support, and she never did that. Actually, she disclosed to me about 6 months ago that she went and got psychological support, and I was so proud of her, because I had a sister who died literally a month before I was born, and she never got support for that. Like, and my sister didn't die; she was actually murdered, and she never got support for that. And she they had a free community event for bereavement, for people who lost their children, and she went and she got connected to the bereavement counselor, and she was able to talk about my sister's death. And because I've been telling her for years, my sister's name was Anna, and then I was born a month after she was murdered, and she named me Arnita as in memory of her. And I've been telling her for years that you need to get emotional support for Anna's death, because she would get depressed every year around her birthday and around the time she died, and it was so visible. And yeah, that's a lot. Like, I don't think we think about the psychosocial emotional health of the community, and especially women who experience so much loss. I know that people think Black women have so many kids that they can't possibly miss the ones that are not here anymore. But it is, as a woman who has 3 alive children and who has had 3 miscarriages, you remember those babies who died just as much as you remember the ones who made it here. Mental health is real and all people, but no one wants to talk about it. I remember what you said, what happened with that belt. So horrible. Yeah, that was a lot. If I was in contact with your mom, she could always talk to me. I could be her emotional. Aw, thank you. I think that older generations, my mom's only 20 years older than me. She's 64. Yeah. So she's like a late baby boomer. She's on the end of the baby boom. I think our older generations have difficulty with accepting help, because they had to do so much on their own, and they were coming up in a system. She grew up at the end of the civil rights era, and they were coming up in a system where they had to fight for everything. You know what I mean? So, they really look at my mom. Really, when I started having conversations about healing with her around my childhood, she really was having a hard time understanding what I was talking to her about, because my grandmother was a sharecropper. My grandmother grew up as a sharecropper, so the way my grandmother beat her children was It's so insane that the way my mother handled us was Gentile. So she had a very difficult time understanding, what we were talking about. Because, she grew up, in a very hostile environment, and probably never went a day without being abused. Hello. Yeah. Yeah, and they just have a lot, so, I really suggest, we be gentle. I know it's hard to be. Whoopings do come from slavery. You right, child. That's exactly where they come from. That's why I don't beat my kids. And when I explain that to people, they try to fight me about it. But you beat your kids. My kids won't have those stories about me. They might have other stories about me, but they won't have the ones where they was beat upside the head, okay? As black people, both men and women, we are human. So many of us don't want to accept that. Even so many of us, we're not machines. We have feelings, profound feelings, and we have souls. Yes, we have souls. Yeah, I don't whoop. Yes, sis, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in corporal punishment. I don't even believe in pension and all that little weird shit people be doing. Y'all do that. I had only had to look at my relationship with my mother to know that I did not want to create that for my children, because I can tell you right now, I'm having a hard time around the idea, because I'm the only functioning child that my mother has. My other 3 siblings, I pray for their souls every day, are still struggling in various ways in life and are not responsible adults and cannot take on the responsibility of taking care of an elder parent. But I pray every day for the patience and the clarity and the forgiveness that I need to have for when that woman cannot take care of herself again, cannot take care of herself anymore, so that I can be clear enough to show up for her in whatever way that is. I still don't know if I'm gonna let her live in my house. And that's the honest to God truth. That's my real me. That's not me masking. The masking me would have said, I might let her, I'm gonna go get her and take care of her. No, I don't know about that now. I might pay for her to have a nice, place somewhere. But I don't know if she's going to live in my house. It depends, because my peace is important. And my mother hasn't healed from a lot of her abusive ways. She's calmed down because she's older and she's slower. But she still got that mouth on her. And I don't know if I've done enough yoga or meditation to take on that type of energy in that way. We gotta understand, your mom is a very personal relationship, even more personal than a marriage. So, maybe after years of being with Kenny and dealing with all his stuff, I'll be softened enough to open my heart to my mother in that way, to allow her to be in my home when she's elderly. But I don't know right now. Yes, we do have to protect our energy. Isaac said, as a black man born in Africa, raised in Africa, live in France, but we still face racism everywhere. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, France bought half of Africa, so I wouldn't put it past them. That I wouldn't put it past. You think you can buy a country? The insanity. The insanity. You went into a continent and split up territories of people that were alive and living their lives. Mommy. And you thought, we're going to go over here and split this continent up amongst us, you guys, because Mommy. They don't know what they're doing. Okay. What you want? What you want? You want an egg? Yeah. Colonialism is some weird shit. And if that ain't a shadow work conversation, I don't know what is. But colonialism is some weird shit. The idea that people think it's okay to go into, because places where people are living, and to assess them in such a way that they need parenting or support from you because they don't live the way that you do, and they need to be informed to live to live closer to the way that you do so that they can be better. It's some weird shit. And that ideology, a lot of people will call it white supremacist ideology, is so integral to how lots of black people and people of color exist in their communities, and why the shadow exists on such a huge level, why we have such huge bouts of classism in our own communities. Because most people, black people and people of color, are trying to live up to white supremacist ideals that do not fit their cultures. Colonialism and today's neocolonialism and humanism cannot exist in the same space. I agree. We are I don't like to get all pro-black, because there is some shit with that too. But I am definitely for the healing of black people. First and foremost, black women, but definitely for the healing of black people. And we have to ask ourselves the hard questions about wanting to assimilate so badly to whiteness, and how it harms us and keeps us from being able to function properly. To the point where, as a black woman, I can get on the internet any time of the day, and not just black men, but black women as well, will find something negative to say to me about my hair, my presentation of my body, all of that. Because we are so colonized in whiteness, we think that all black women should assimilate to look white. We think that all black women should strive to be thin. And then they'll say, oh, it's a health conversation. But when you say, I don't have diabetes, I don't have high blood pressure, I have no real health issues, then what? Then what conversation is it then? Because I don't have diabetes. I don't have high blood pressure. I exercise every day. I don't exercise the way you think I should do it. I don't go to the gym and abuse my body and harm myself for your likes, for your attention. And then you'll say, I'm putting my body on the internet for attention, which I'm not, because clearly I'm not most people's body type, because I haven't assimilated into whiteness. And I don't care to. So when you don't do that, you get the backlash from the people in the community who don't appreciate being black, actually, who don't like being black. They think they like being black until they see an actual black person, someone being okay with being black, and then they say, don't be black like that, be black like this. Let me see what y'all saying. The truth is the truth. As black people, we need healing on so many levels. Our women need to start loving themselves so our men can get back on their throne as well. When I was in Africa, I never had a health problem. I have high blood pressure because of the way we live and not good food we eat. Yep. Preach, though. You was making me laugh this morning. Breaking the toxic cycle. Majority don't want to. No, they don't. A lot of us, unfortunately, are more invested in assimilation than authenticity. I cannot, and I know it's hard, especially those of us in the Americas who are disconnected from Africa and don't have, a real claim to the continent other than the fact that we look like we could be on the continent. But that is no one alive. That is no one's alive who is alive's fault today. You can look it up. You can do things to get closer to. If you feel disassociated, you can do things to get closer to the African community, or you can do things to get closer to the Pan-African community and things like that. You know what I mean? And before, because when I was in my teens, I actually almost got adopted by a white family. And was exposed to a lot of things that I didn't understand as a black person about whiteness. And it taught me a lot in those 6 years. They put me in a private school. My education went up so well. When I went to an HBCU, I could literally teach my first 2 years of classes because we did that in 10th and 11th grade. The entry classes, I'd already done them. It was so boring to me. My first 2 years of college almost made me want to scream. They have access to things, and their children have access to things that we don't even think about. And it's the way it's set up. It's the way it's designed. And the way that I was being taught to be a young person in their home was very different than a lot of my black counterparts were taught to be a young person at home. We had meetings every day about my accountability, about how I showed up, what I did and what I didn't do, what I contributed and what I didn't contribute. Every damn day was a checklist. Arnita did this. Arnita did that. Arnita didn't do this. Arnita didn't do that. How are you going to do it better tomorrow? How are you going to do it better? That was constantly. I was under so much stress. I never, ever knew how stressful it was to be alive, except for those few years that I was there. And I had so many expectations, like all the time. And it gave me an eye into how things are done differently. I don't totally agree with it, and I don't totally disagree with it. But it was different. And I had to really rein myself back in when they disconnected from me, because that's what happened. I didn't assimilate well. And so I was discarded. And that's what happens to a lot of black kids that enter the foster care system and are fostered or adopted by white families. You don't assimilate well because you've been exposed to blackness for too long, you get discarded. And that taught me a valuable lesson about how capitalism and white supremacy works. It was interesting. It was jarring because I had all this support, I had all this support that I had been looking for, and then I had no support. I don't know why the internet is doing this to your iPad, my boo. There we go. It's up now. And then I was 21 years old trying to figure out how to do things on my own. I didn't have no health insurance. I didn't have nowhere to live. I was in college 3 states away. Luckily, I had, because they sent me to college in Oklahoma first. And some craziness happened there, and I requested to be moved closer to DC because that's where I was from, and I felt like if I was at least 2 to 3 states away, I could come back home and take care of my affairs and reconnect in some way to some people that I knew. That was my youth, right? And so I came back up here and went to college in Virginia, and when my foster mom got sick, and they said that I was too much of a stressor, too much of a strain, that they couldn't support me anymore. And so that's life. Had to figure it out. It wasn't their job. I was an adult. I was 21. Had to figure it out. And I was in my last year of school, dropped everything. The fight or flight kicked in, dropped everything, came back to DC with nothing, got a job, enrolled in UDC, University of the District of Columbia, for college, and got a job in retail and restarted my life in that way. And those years were crazy. I know what I was doing. But I figured it out. Made a lot of mistakes, but I figured it out. And I think that the important thing that I learned was what they did impart upon me. I was responsible for a lot of things around the house, so I knew how to do things for myself in a certain kind of a way that I don't think I would have known how to do if I would have stayed in a foster home, like a real foster home, where you're relegated to being watched over by an authority, or a group home, which I had been in, which was horrible. And I really didn't do good in group homes. I got in a lot of fights, because you have to share a room, 3-4 people sometimes. And that shit was horrible. And a lot of times everyone's has so much trauma, and you force this many people to be in a small space together. There's going to be fights. There's going to be people stealing, like all types of weird shit. It's like jail for kids. Like, that's the best way I can think of it. Whenever I hear someone say they grew up in foster care and they were in group homes, I feel so sad at the idea, because there are no good group homes. There are no good group homes. There is no good group situation to put abandoned children in. There's just not. There's no good space to take someone from their mother's care and then force them to be in a home with other children who they don't know or never seen, and have to deal with all the other people's traumas and go through life and expect to be functioning. It's a horrible idea. It's a failed system. It's terrible. Foster care, I don't know, honestly, if it's worse from the results of my sister who stayed with my mom and the results of us who were placed in foster care. I don't know who mentally is worse off. I think it's about even. I don't know. I don't know. My sister who stayed with my mom has some pretty significant mental issues. But then those of us who were removed from her care and placed in foster care have some pretty significant mental issues. Yeah. The only difference is my sister and my brother who were removed have issues with the system plus a parent. My sister who was not removed only has issues with her mother. She has no one else to have this conversation with. I have several adults other than my mother who I would love to have a conversation with about how they showed up as foster parents. One of my foster parents was a crackhead. Was an actual fucking crackhead. A grown-ass woman had 5 foster kids, one of them in a wheelchair who could not do anything for himself. All of them had disabilities mentally. Some of them were autistic. Some of them were other mental disabilities happening. And she had been a foster mother for 25 years. And yes, she was a black woman. And that shit was the worst foster home I'd ever been in. The only reason I got out of that foster home, and this is how I ended up in the white woman's foster home, was because the drug dealers who she owed money to came to the home while I was going to school one morning and said that they were going to kill everyone in here at such and such time if she don't give them their money. Jesus. I don't even talk about these foster care stories because the shit is retarded. And I don't mean to say retarded, but it's insane. Have a good day, Malik. But yeah, I'm off the topic of shadow work. But this is all the stuff, right? This is all the stuff that's hidden in the communities that we don't deal with. And we have to act. This is a part of our shadow. All of this is a part of our community shadow. The assimilation conversations, the harmful conversations, how we treat our children. All of this is stuff that we don't like to talk about in public because we like to think to present our best foot forward. We like to, because if one black person looks bad, all black people look bad. We are a monolith in the eyes of our community and in the eyes of the community at large. And so we do our best to maintain this appearance. And then we have all of these shadow behaviors that are negative and harmful that don't get handled or addressed. And the people who are on the lowest part of the totem pole get the effects of it. I hope you were adopted by a good family. It would be nice if extended parts of the family were able to help. I think the biggest issue for black people is that most families are still, I ain't gonna say most, but a lot of people are still, most families, when I talk to people, they're like, I don't even know my certain cousins. Especially if you're up north, if you're here, like DC, New York, whatever, upper people more. I think when I talk to more southern people, they have more ties to their extended family. I just met one of my cousins, my first cousin, who lives in DC. We're the same age. Just met her, like in the last 2 years. She's my mother's brother's daughter. Just met her. Up until this point, I've only had 3 cousins. Apparently, I have like 100. So yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, gaming mom. I'm glad that your adopted family was good. But yeah, that disconnect from the mother is a very interesting wound around that we get to heal. And I hope you and your mom get to a place of healing and understanding, because that's important for you and her. And especially if you have children. So, y'all, I did not intend to be on here for an hour. I've been doing very good about getting on here for 15 minutes and getting off. But y'all got to know more of me today, as y'all always do. And I'm grateful for everyone who hung in there with me and shared. But what you're saying about foster care systems is at the root of so many people's mass behavior. Shadow work can help with healing process for so much trauma. Yes, we definitely have to do the shadow work to heal from the trauma, and you're right. We can't ignore that we have these things going on. I was having a huge conversation with myself this morning about my ideals around sex and where I learned certain things about sex and how I was introduced to sex and what that has done to my psyche. Oh, I'm sorry, gaming mom. Yeah, she might have some guilt or shame around the adoption. It could be a lot of different things. Yeah. Bonjour. I am well. How are you? But yeah, if we stop, like, and that's why I'm very, adamant about being present in my children's lives and taking the time to listen to them and to hear them, and to not just be so caught up in doing what I'm doing all the time. Because as adults, we can do that. We can get very hyper focused on being adult and living our lives and get caught up in the idea that, oh, I gotta do this, I gotta have a job, I gotta do this, and you do gotta do all those things. But then we miss out on these moments that we get to have with our children, where we get to teach them and we get to learn from them. It's interesting what you said earlier about assimilation to larger society. I don't know if you saw what I wrote above about when we Black people get together. Yeah, I'm trying to find it. Bonafide. Oh, whenever Black people decide to get together and meet as a group with a like mind, there's a healing energy like a Black exposed of years. Yes. No. We are, without a doubt, energetically amazing. Amazing. And this is why I will not divorce my identity of Blackness. And that's why you get it full frontal with me, you don't get the coiffed Blackness, you don't get the professional Blackness, you don't get the acceptable Blackness. And it's hard sometimes how to know how far to take that, because sometimes I'm so used to bucking against the system. Sometimes I push too hard, so I have to really find a happy medium where I'm not so forcing myself to be in this other box where I'm constantly challenging. My life is this testament to constantly challenging assimilation. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be that person as well. Gaming mom, email me. I do work with women around trauma. Email me and we'll talk. Thanks, we'll talk. They'll say I'm too loud. I've been hearing that my whole life. I've been hearing that my whole life. And it has been my email's in my in the bio over on the about section of this page. Actually, I'll type it in. I think I could type it in. Can I type it in? I can't type it in. I can't type nothing in. Huh. That's weird. Yeah, it's I don't want to shame other people for being who they are. If you feel like you have to do all that stuff in order to be a part of mainstream society, that's you. But own it. Own who you're being. Own why you're doing it. Even to the point of when I named my children, I got people were like, "Why you name them that? That's a Black name." My email is zoha@zohameanslight.com. I think it's in my what you call that? in the I can't type it for some reason. I don't know why you can't type on here. That's so stupid. But it's in the there's a bio part on about part on YouTube when you go to my page to my channel, and it's in there. Even when I was naming my children, I got this backlash from certain people in family about their names being too black and they wouldn't get jobs. And I was like, so you think they're going to be fooled when they show up? You think they're going to turn white for the interview? Like if I name them Claire or Becca, you think they're when they show up to the interview that someone's going to be like, oh, Becca. And they're just going to see a white person instead of seeing an actual black person in front of them. And yeah, their names were too black and weird. And I was like, their names, their names. They're not, and that's a part of our heritage is our names are different, and nobody does that when someone has an ethnic name and they're not black. No one is like, oh, you know, you can't name your child a traditional name because they won't get a job because everyone will know they're Indian or whatever. Like, so weird how we police ourselves into these boxes and then ask for equality. It's an oxymoron. It's ironic as fuck. How do you expect to be accepted when you don't feel acceptable? You find so many things wrong with who you are, and you, what do you call that? Groom yourself into this acceptable space, and then when you're not accepted after you've done all that grooming, you are upset, and it's energy, boo. You came into space not liking yourself, so now you're forcing people to like the you that you don't even like. This what do you call that? Cognizant is dissonance. How do you say that? My brain is like freezing on me. Cognitive dissonance. That's the word. Like, you're so close, yet so far. You love yourself, yet you hate what you truly are. You desire to be liked, but you don't like how you show up when you're not trying to be liked. It's a weird conundrum. And when you get past that, when you get beyond those ideals, and you don't work as hard to fit in or to assimilate, you lose a certain amount of access to things, but you gain perspective. You can see some shit for what it really is. And I'm okay with that. Some things I don't need to have access to, some things I don't need to be a part of. You know? And like Bonafide said earlier, being different has always been a blessing to me. It's gotten me out of so many spaces that I didn't need to be in. And I probably have had a very trying life, but I probably missed out on a lot of shit that would have been way more detrimental to me psychologically because I could not assimilate. And when I've tried to assimilate, I've created such discord in my life. I refuse. I'm at the point now, you know, I'm like, I refuse. I absolutely refuse to try to fit in to other people's ideals of what a black woman should be, what blackness should look like, or what a woman should look like. I'm me. I didn't come here with all these ideals in my head. I came here with me, and I'm expressing me. And you don't have to like it, but you do get to respect it. You don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with who I am. I'm not begging anyone to like me. There's tons of things on the internet I see all the time, and people I meet in real life that I don't agree with, or I don't especially, vibe with, but I don't disrespect them. I don't harm them with my words. I'm not negative to them. I don't try to assimilate them into my thoughts or the way that I think. I just talk to the people who are like minded. I just vibe with the people who flow with me. We need to be very careful about how we name our children. There's so much power in a name. I wish that my name was more obviously black in the cultural sense. It would have been wonderful. Oh, thank you. I feel awesome. Thank you. You're awesome too. Yes, that was my intention. My children's names. My son's name is Asa. He is named after the civil rights leader A. Philip Randolph. He is a under-celebrated civil rights leader. He didn't even use his first name, Asa. He would go as A. Philip Randolph because Philip Randolph, so white. But I thought he was an important part of the civil rights movement that doesn't get talked about. He's actually the person who organized the workers union to inspire the workers march on Washington that Dr. King led. A lot of people don't know that. It was people before Dr. King doing things, and A. Philip Randolph was at the forefront of that movement. And my daughter's name is Aziza. These are African names. And Asa means healer or doctor, and Aziza means powerful. My other little daughter name is Marley. She named after Bob Marley because her daddy loved Bob Marley. So had to let that slide. But I did get an African name in there. Her middle name is Adia, which means God's gift. So yeah, we get to be more intentional when we are placing names on things and places and people. And it is a connection to our heritage to do that. My mother was in the 70s. She named all us French names because that was the jam back then. Everybody was some version of a French name, like Beyonce, Letitia, Tanika. That's like black plus French. That's how the names, if you look at the aesthetic names of what people would call ghetto names, they weren't actually ghetto names. They were names that were created from African names and French names because black people were really in love with those concepts in the 70s and 60s and 80s of combining names. And that's how a lot of black people got names with the la or the ta or the ra or the ja in front of them in the 80s, 70s and 80s, is because that was a popular trend among black people who were returning to Pan-Africanism. They were naming their kids African names, and other black people like French names, but they wanted the African name as well, so they would combine those two beginnings. And that's a part of African American heritage. There's an actual TikTok that talks about all African. I wish I knew the name off the top of my head. If I find him, I'll put him in the description of this video. Who goes over what is it called? I can't think of the word for it, but how black people over the years have named their children and why that was popular. And that's where I learned from. I didn't learn that from anywhere else. TikTok is very educational. And if you can get something in 3 minutes and 15 seconds or 15 seconds, it's great for that. I remember that I'm a child of the 70s. Yeah, man, everybody was, I have a few aunts that was in the Black Panthers, and all their kids got the those Sekou and all those back. All my rest of my cousins are Aishas and Ria and those type of names and all of that. So we all had those what people call ghetto names, but they're not actually ghetto names. They're black people creative, like we always are, and creating a lane for ourselves because that's what we had to do. We weren't allowed to be a part of the mainstream, so we had to create our own stream, and that's okay. What y'all talking about? I remember that I'm child of the 70s. Yes, thank you. I'm black. I know you black. Oh man, yeah. I like the black experience is so multi-layered. It's hard to boil it down to one thing. Everybody has such a unique experience, a unique perspective. Depending on where you live, grew up, you may have experienced things that no one has ever experienced. Oh, it's a lot in Chicago. My name is Karis. Ah, I like that name. Um, but yeah, we have a different we have multi-layered experiences. Like, Chicago is a very different experience than growing up in Southeast DC. Even Oh, thank you, gaming mom. Even down the street in Virginia is a different experience than growing up in Washington D.C. And especially, let's just go take DC in the 70s, DC in the 80s, DC in the 90s. Three totally different experiences depending on where you grew up and what was going on. There are things that happened when I was a child that only I've asked people, only 2 or 3 people can tell me they remember it. It almost makes me feel like it didn't exist because it was such a small part of my reality, of the reality, and I'm like the only person who remembers that reality along with a few other people. There was this TV show that was very popular in the 80s, and it was around, in the 80s, DC was the murder capital because there was so much drugs, there was so much crack, it was so terrible. And I grew up in Southeast DC, and it was a lot of murders over this drug and selling this drug. And it was very normal in my childhood for someone to get murdered every week and for us to witness them getting murdered. And, in my head, they weren't getting murdered. They were just getting shot, right? Because that's what happens, right? Oh, such and such got shot. That's how we talked about it. And so, I didn't experience this as abnormal. But if I had grown up in Virginia or somewhere else where I don't know any black community where crack wasn't a big issue in the 80s, but we're somewhere where crack wasn't a big issue in the 80s, this would have been totally off the Richter. But it was really bad where I grew up. It was really bad. And a lot of the young black men were selling crack and were being killed by each other. And I remember there was this TV show called City Under Siege, and it was specifically created for Washington, D.C. And the shootings would happen, and then this helicopter would come out of nowhere, and then all of these police would descend upon our neighborhood, and then the stretchers would come out because there were bodies, and we would all see what we saw in real life on TV the next week. And I was talking to a lot of people who grew up in the city, but they didn't grow up on the side of the city that I grew up on. They grew up in Northeast or Northwest or whatever. And certain people have different protections with, depending on where you live, classism looks different. We were Southeast DC at that time. If you lived there, you were lower class or you were working class. That's it. Working class or lower class. You were not upper class. You were not upper middle class. You were not lower middle class. You weren't nowhere near anything that was, money. So you saw a lot of shit. Yeah, it was horrible. And I asked so many people who grew up in DC at that time if they remember that show. Only 2 or 3 people told me they remember that show. That's how niche an experience that was. It was completely whittled down to Southeast DC. And the issue is that there's not a lot of people from my childhood life. Not a lot. I don't have a lot of childhood friends. Very few. I don't have very few too because of the circumstances of the neighborhood was so bad. There's some people I never want to see again for any reason, even if they are alive. I don't want to see them. Life circumstances made the worst possible people as children, so I can't imagine they are very decent adults. I'm glad you got out, brother. I'm glad you got out because a lot of people didn't. And a lot of people, that was the only way they could support. A lot of the young kids in my were doing it, were supporting their moms, was paying bills. They wasn't doing that shit to get shoes and shit. Yeah, eventually, but that was a part of a way of a survival. So when that kid got killed, that income died. And that's sad that, had to be put in those positions in order to survive. It's like, we look at, oh, that's fucked up, this is in the community and people are selling it. But what about a country that allows such things to be in a community so that people have to survive in that way? Yeah, we do get to take responsibility for how we show up. We definitely do. We definitely do. We definitely get to look at how we harm each other. And get to look at the bigger system of this shit was really a part of the plan. I hope she graduates with honors. It was part of the plan. And the corner of the wire, yeah, the wire, yeah. I can't even look at that now that Michael, I can't think of his last name right now. Michael K. White has passed. I can't even look at it. I can't look at The Wire. I actually cannot look at any drug shows anymore. I remember after I watched The Wire, and I would say it was a good show. It was good for what it was good for. And The Corner was horrible. I would never watch that again with anything in my life for any reason. That shit was very what you call that, like raw. Felt, if you watch that and you lived it, it's almost traumatic. Like, it is traumatic. It brings up a traumatic response. It brought up a traumatic response in me. I was like, oh, this is too much. Like, I seen women like that. I seen kids like that. I knew guys who sold it, got on it, and then they turned into crackheads. Like, that show was devastating because it was too real. And The Wire was real in its own way, but I think I was so far removed from Southeast DC by the time The Wire came out. What you talking about, guy? Oh, you talking about your daughter? That's a good name too. That's a French name. I think it's French, Gia, or Italian. Let me see. Yeah, so I've been on here for a long time. Oh my God, I did this in a minute since Kenny and me got on. But yeah, I think that we just get to, instead of, yeah, we just got a lot of work to do, y'all. We got a lot of work to do. I'm gonna leave it like that because I have like lots of thoughts that go around my head around our community, and I know it's going to take a lot of people's with thoughts that are connected to healing to do the work. And right now I feel like there's so much division as far as black women and black men are concerned on the online. I don't know about in real life. I don't feel this way with my partner. Oh yeah, I don't feel this way with my partner around hateful towards black men or him hateful towards black women, but I do experience this online, and I do know some people who fit this description in real life who have difficulties with within the sexes. But I think that's also a big issue right now around why we are not healing, is because these kinds of conversations are so much more prevalent, and so it's kind of hard to do the work. Women need to help women, and men need to help men. I believe that. I believe in that. I believe that, men have to be at a certain space in order to hear women. Just like women need to be at a certain space in order to hear men. You have to both have a level of compassion in order to deal with each other. Because the way that we function is very different. Even last night, I'm going to give y'all an example. I was washing clothes, and Kenny has this habit of placing random pieces of paper out of his pocket on the dryer when he's taking his clothes out of his stuff, cleaning his pants out. So I'm washing clothes, and I lift up the lint screen, and one of these random pieces of paper fall into the lint screen. I am like, fuck, now our dryer's going to catch on fire, right? So I'm like, I go get him, and I'm like, go take the dryer apart and get the piece of paper fell down in the lint screen, because I don't want the dryer to catch on fire. And he's like, dryer's not going to catch on fire, man. You're overthinking it. So I'm like, I'm gonna look it up on the internet, because I'm not gonna be in here washing clothes and the house catch on fire. You're at work, and I'm addressing this now because this is how I move. Like, I want things addressed when I see that there's a problem. And this is a feminine ideal, okay? And I'm clear about that. This is how women move. This is how I move. This is how most women I know move. When we see something we want to handle like that. We want shit to disappear that we don't want around. We want things fixed that we want fixed. We want things handled. That's my energy, because that's how I move. That's how we're taught to move. Women, children are not raised to sit and watch things. They're not raised to allow things to happen. If your mama tell your ass to get up and wash the dishes, she don't mean right now. She meant yesterday. She tell you go do something, and you're a girl, she meant yesterday. And I grew up with a brother, so I know the difference. My brother take out the trash, he could dawdle all day long. I'm gonna take the trash out. Nothing happened. I don't go wash some dishes right now. I'm getting the shit slapped out of me. It's just how female relationships are sometimes, and what we pass on to our children. And I'm doing myself a favor by not doing this to my daughters. I don't have high expectations of them, and not high expectations of their brother. Like, I don't have any expectations of them. I teach them things to do, and they get to learn how to do it. So he was like, no, whatever. So I look it up on the internet, and it is a hazard, like I thought, and whatever. So I'm in here trying that. It's 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. I know he doesn't want to do it because he just came home from work a few hours ago, and he's tired, and he doesn't want to do it. And the dryer is heavy as fuck. I cannot move the dryer and get behind it. He has to do it. So I said, babe, I know you're tired, and this is for me at the utmost importance that you get this handled, because it is a safety hazard. It needs to get done. So I showed him the video of how to get it out and everything. So he gets back there, and he gets everything done. And so, he's annoyed or whatever. And I'm like, thank you. I said, but and I'm talking to him as calmly as possible, because this is where things get tight, right? He's already done something he didn't want to do, that he felt like was not an issue. Oh, yeah, that's not what the video said. So he had to take the whole back off, and so he did it. And so I just told him, I said, I wash clothes almost every day because he works and he uses his uniforms, and we don't want COVID or whatever else is out there in our house. He goes in the laundry room, he disrobes, and all his clothes go instantly into the washer and dryer. And that's why he's taking out all the stuff and putting it on the dryer that's in his pockets. And I said, maybe you change your routine and stop putting all the paper on top of the dryer and never throwing it in the trash, but stopping at the trash can on your way towards the, towards the laundry room and take all the paper out of your pants at the trash can. Of course, it's like, well, there's some stuff I want to save and da 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 da. Yes, I get that. And if it's important to you, why is it on the dryer 6 weeks later where it can get trapped in the lint screen? So, like, we have to, there's a logical aspect of male interaction that I have to tap into every time I want to have a conversation with him. Because if I have a conversation from the feminine aspect of emotions, he's not going to get it. He's not going to always get it. And it's not that he's not emotionally aware. It's just not his go-to. That's my go-to, right? So we have to, train ourselves. And then when I'm having like an emotional situation, he has to come out of his logic-based self and say, okay, right now, she's emotional and she's upset, so I have to not try to fix her emotions, but try to have empathy and understand what she's saying, even if I don't agree with it or I'm not where she is. Because this is what we do, right? We get in relationships and we want people to see our vantage point, but we don't want to be open to the fact that we might not understand what they're talking about, or that we don't have the emotional or emotional intelligence or logical intelligence to understand how to function with them through whatever they're going through. I hope it makes sense. But that's the example I gave, right? You feel me? Yeah, that's the example I gave, right? So we have to come out, like if I'm in an emotional space, I have to come out of that emotional space and get to a logical space to get him to hear me. If I'm in an emotional space and he's trying to talk to me with logic, he has to come out of that logical space and meet me at my emotions. So we have to meet each other where we're at constantly. That's a part of being in a relationship. I can't come to you with logic if you're emotional. I do that with clients. Clients get emotional with me. I stay logical. Why? Because I'm not in a relationship with my clients. I'm neutral. I don't have to feel what they feel. I just have to be able to listen to them. Right? But that part of me that can turn on and be a counselor, that's not going to work in my relationship. I can't be counseling my husband. He don't want to hear that shit. He'd be like, fuck you think you're talking to? I'm not one of your clients. And because I've been a counselor for most of my life, that is my go-to when I hear a story, when somebody starts talking to me. I turn on my counselor ear. Okay, I'm listening, I'm listening, I'm listening, I'm listening, I'm listening. But when you're in love with somebody, they want you to listen. They want your emotional investment. They want your logical perspective. They want all that shit. It's because of things like this I feel that more of us men should wear those bags that fit on a belt. Hold on to random papers and whatnot to keep them out of our pockets. Oh my God. And he works at FedEx, so they have like 6 pockets on each side of their pants, so there's just paper everywhere, and he's delivering shit and just putting it in there and all that. It's just like, dude, throw this shit in the trash. Like, and he is, as far as I don't want to say he's the junkier, because he's very neat, but he keeps shit. Me, I'm the throwawayer I'm the minimalist of our relationship. If I see that he ain't worn some shit all year, I give it away. I ain't wear some shit all year, I give it away. I don't keep nothing. If we're not using a piece of furniture and it's just taking up space, it goes to Goodwill. Why did we buy this shit? Why is it in here? I don't want to keep running into something. I don't want to keep seeing something that's not useful. I don't understand that. And honestly, that's part of my trauma. Because living in foster care, you can only take what you can. You can only take what can go with you. They give you a black trash bag, you fill it up. Whatever can fit in that bag, that's what you take with you to the next house. That's how I am. I don't keep shit I don't need. And that includes emotions, anything. I'm very clear in that way. Like, this don't need to come. We can get rid of this. So, yeah. I have to be clear about that when I'm dealing with him. Like he don't function in that way. Yeah. It's so like people don't understand how when you live in foster care, how you really don't have, you're taught, you don't have what do you call that, you're very aware of spatial accountability. You're very aware of how much space you're taking up. You don't take up a lot of space. You're taught to live very menially. You can move. I can live with a toothbrush, two pair of clothes, and one pair of shoes and some underwear. And I could go to work every day and you would not know. I will figure it out. I will figure it out. I will buy me 3 different coats. I will figure it out. An umbrella, something. You would not know that I had only 2 outfits. Those 2 outfits would look like 6 outfits. Because that's how they treat you. They treat you like you could be replaced at any time and you know it. And so you do your best to maintain as little space as possible. And yeah, so I really have a real declutter issue. There's a closet over here and back here that I be begging him, get this shit out my house. And he grew up, middle class, 2 parents. They divorced when he was young. But he grew up like that. And his grandmother came with a she has all her history intact, and his mother has her history intact. They come from a family, of generational growth. And so he's learning how not to hold on to access. Like, we literally, his mom, we just went over there, she cleaned out everything. They have stuff from 1930 in the house. I don't even know how that's possible. What Bonafide say? You said facts. It's good not to hold on to any access badges, physical, emotional, otherwise. Yes, I agree. Like, I really, 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 really am divorced from needing a lot of things. And that's why I think that a lot of people see, when they see simplicity, they think of poorness. They think it's poverty. They confuse simplicity with poverty. And no, I just don't need a lot of things to be happy. Water. A cold. I'm cold. My dog is cold. Just don't need a lot of things to be happy. And I learned early on that having things don't mean shit. Because somebody could pack up your shit and put it in a trash bag and throw it in the trash and move you to another house, and you had to get all new shit. That's literally how foster care is. If the person even cares enough to pack your shit up in a plastic bag. If they even care enough. Because please. A lot of people, I ain't gonna say everybody in the foster care system is like this, but a lot of people I ran into, they was really dedicated to their check they got every month. And that's about it. They did the bare minimum to say they was taking care of you. You went to your doctor's appointments and you went to school, and you wasn't being physically abused, but emotionally and mentally abused and all that shit, and exposed to all types of weird shit that you shouldn't have been exposed to. But yeah, I think I don't know if I should keep up with the shadow work on this, or I should just put an IG live on it. I mean, live on this, because this has turned into a whole lot of different shit. But I enjoyed talking to you guys today. We've been on here for a long time. Jesus Christ. I'm gonna get on my mat because I need to do yoga, because that's what I'm dressed for. And maybe I'll get some yoga later. Years ago, I remember hearing that the Zen tradition, one of the keys to happiness was to only have 7 possessions. I'm not completely certain how accurate that is, though. Wow. That's a good exercise, right? What are those 7 things you would take with you, right? Like, what is that like? Yo, y'all know I'm gonna grab my crystals, right? This is only one. This is the stuff I make jewelry with, so this don't count. I'm gonna grab my crystal. I gotta take my glasses too because I can't see. A Negro is blind. Um. So yeah, crystals and glasses. Um. I guess a pair of clothes because I don't want to be naked because people will be saying I'm trying to. I don't know what else. Um. And something to draw with or write with. I think that'll be in a plant. We up to what, 5 or 6 now? I'm running out of space. Yeah, I have to be able to write. I have to be able to draw. Yeah, I think that'll be it. Everything else is I can use when I get I can use other people's stuff and give it back to them. It would be an amazing concept. Like if when we got oof shit. Don't look, don't force the hand of the US because we almost there the way they trying to push us into a another type of society, the way things are going financially in this country. Because capitalism can't go on forever. It's just not sustainable. But that's another conversation. What else? I do it. I hope y'all good, man. I enjoyed hanging out with y'all today. I didn't expect to get on here and have this long of a conversation or this in-depth of a conversation over so many different things. And I'm glad that y'all connecting. And Gaming Mom, if you're still here when I close this video, I'll definitely put the coaching and all of that stuff. The links will be in the description. So if you want to wait until I do that, you can get that information from there. Right, Bonafide. Like, I had this real dystopian thought last night. Like, you know how, like, your grandma always would say, the end of the world was coming? I really had that thought last night. Like, I was like, damn, what if this is it? Like, what if these are the last... And when they say the end of the world, I'm not talking about like the planet's gonna blow up and die, whatever. But I'm talking about when you say the end of the world, it's like that song says, "As we know it," right? Like how we've been able to live and function in the world. That's an end. That is ending. That is. I don't know if that's sustainable for our children. I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I don't think they'll get to experience life the way that we've experienced. I think we're on the precipice of a deep change in the world, and hopefully, I mean, you know, the older generations will have the hardest shift. They always have the hardest shift, because they're just so, you know, tied to how things were. And I think Generation X and up have a decenter chance around adjustment, even though I think some still older parts of Generation X have a hard time with conceptualizing new ideas, even though they were a part of a generation who literally lived through a whole lived through a whole change and shift as far as computers are concerned. But yeah, I think we are about to experience something very different than what we've been experiencing. And oh wow, Game One, that is very on point right there. Now, I don't believe in coincidences. So yeah, I think we're definitely moving into some sort of unknown, and that's why people are bucking so hard and getting so tight, like scrapping for the last pieces of what we used to know and fighting for it so hard. And this is why you see so much with the Trumpers and all of this stuff happening, is because people want to hold on to that old way so much. And I think it's gone, y'all. I think we are at the beginning of something new. I used that term dystopian just yesterday. Just told my friend that all these mandates are the sort of thing that one might imagine in some type of 1984 like dystopian novel. You're right. It is. It's totally been foretold, right? We're not living in a we just don't know what that dystopian future looks like. Do we get to have an investment in trying to mold it? Yes. But these, like they like to say, the 1% or whatever have an idea what they want already. And so since we've been moving towards their ideals anyway, that they would most likely, have already have a framework for what they're moving towards. But, disruption. Don't never discount disruption. Don't never discount disruption. I never discount it. I never discount it. I don't think everybody's going to go along as easily as people would like. So that's another thing. We'll see. We'll see where everybody end up on what side everybody end up on, right? But I definitely feel like there's a major shift going on, and that it will definitely change life the way we know it. I might not even be able to talk to you guys like this anymore. I don't even think like a lot of the things that we are used to are going to be around. This is my thinking, and it could be extreme, but I don't think a lot of things that we are used to are going to survive this transformation. It's going to look very different. I've been trying to get my kids to practice writing in case there are no computers. Because, these kids only have to write in math. They don't really have to write anything. They're not forced to learn cursive like we were. And yeah, it's really weird. But yeah. I did see that they were working on robots that can organically reproduce themselves. I did see that, and I was like, I saw that, and I kind of made this face I'm making right now, like, yeah, like, whoa, this shit is crazy. I have a typewriter, and I was like, yeah, y'all might be going back to that. Right. I was like, what the heck is that, Mom? What is that? Why did you pull out that relic? Because this is about to be your life. Right. It is some Terminator type Matrix stuff. But I do think that, if you look at history, every empire has a rise and fall, right? There's waves, right? And this empire I think is coming to a down wave. We just happen to be living in it. Most of us, a lot of us. And sucks for us. Sucks for us. I mean, that the United States is the baby of Britain. It's their child, just like Australia. I'm sure they won't let their child fall too far on the wayside, just enough to keep control of it like they've always had. But that's another conversation. I'm gonna hop off here, y'all, because this is way beyond. I hope y'all have a good day, and I'm gonna talk to y'all next time. Hopefully shorter, and I'm gonna get on my yoga mat. I'm gonna holler at y'all. Be well. Peace.